Welcome back to another episode of Above the Bar Podcast, where I'm sitting with Brandon Wagle, and he's going to actually show you how to acquire real estate in your 20s. And I believe the banks will actually love you for this.
Should.
And we're also trying to get a sponsorship by Mountain Valley because they're the only hydration that's fitting of the name Above the Bar. So we appreciate it. Brandon, appreciate having you on, man. Take your first sip. Let us know how it is. Is it actually above the bar?
Above the bar, yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that fits the bill.
Yeah, 100%. Brandon, I think it's most important to start off right away because a lot of people will probably immediately see this episode and say, he's only 20, which how old are you, 25?
24. I'll be at 25 in a month.
Okay, he's only 25. You look only 25. You look about as young as me. Like, there's no way this kid got that much real estate.
Yeah.
How much real estate do you even have?
Yeah, so my partner and I own currently 27 apartment units, and then I also own a single-family home that is a short-term rental or will be a short-term rental. I actually just acquired that. So that consists of two separate properties. One is a 5-unit. We converted it to a 6th unit when we purchased the property, and then most recently in 2025, we did also acquire 21 units as well. So that takes us to 27 total on the multifamily side of things, and then this one short-term rental.
Wow, so almost 28.
Yeah, pretty much about 28 units collectively. So
that's quite a few doors.
Yeah.
I thought I was killing it, and I have 3. Way to bring that down
Good
to realization.
Start,
yeah. You're 24. How did you even acquire that much real estate? Is probably the general question that you're probably going to get right off the gate.
Yeah, 100%. So I guess to kind of back it up, I started in college starting to get interested in real estate and specifically just investing in general. I kind of, figured out when I was a freshman, sophomore in college, like no one's coming to save me. Like I'm not going to learn in school what I need to learn to get to where I want to be. So I had to start taking that into my own hands. So it was getting my hands on as many books as I could, listening to as many podcasts as I could, and then actually doing something with that information, because a lot of times people just get analysis paralysis. They learn so much and then they do nothing with it. So for me, it was all about, I need to make as much money as I can. I need to save as much money of that as I can. And then I need to find not just a deal, but the right deal to put that capital into and get it to work. And I was, as a kid, I was always kind of the weird kid that, you get $1 and you didn't want to spend it. Like most kids want to go buy a candy bar or something stupid, right? And I never really knew why I was like that. I just wanted to save as much as I could. And then when I discovered first the stock market and then real estate, I realized like, oh, this is what I was meant to do with that money, right?
Which I think that's very fitting because me and Tim were actually just having the conversation that formal education will make you a living and self-education will make you a fortune.
100%.
It almost sounds like you followed that exact path.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So what are the practical steps though? Because ultimately somebody's watching this podcast, they click the title because of exactly what it was. Learn this one skill and you'll be able to acquire real estate in your 20s. Like what are the practical steps? Somebody's sitting there, they watch this episode, they realize they wanted more, maybe outside of the normal path. Like what's 1, 2, maybe 3 steps that you're like, hey, this is exactly what you should do in order to start your real estate career?
Yeah.
Ultimately some of it probably takes a little bit of time, but like what are the practical steps that it takes to get there?
Yeah, I guess the first and foremost step is like you have to be educated, right? You just can't go in and blindly do something. It's how you can get yourself in trouble in a hurry, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So like first and foremost, it is the education piece. So like I'll just tell you where I started. Like most people that are interested in finance or real estate have probably stumbled across the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Have you read that?
I have not.
You need to read it.
I've been told.
It is the foundation of everything that I kind of based my principles around when I was starting to acquire real estate. So that's what really like kickstarted my mind into, hey, I need to do this. And then from there, it was learning like, okay, how do I underwrite deals, right? When I'm looking at a deal on the market, how do I actually know that this will work? And part of that just comes by doing reps, right? Yeah. I mean, like it was something where at first you go out and look at a duplex or a 4-unit and kind of get your feet wet. And you're like, oh, okay, I can run the numbers easy enough. I can see like, here's what it's going to bring in for revenue. Here's what the expenses are. A lot of times when we're underwriting deals, we like to be kind of conservative with our expense estimates. Like a lot of times, if you can conservatively estimate 50% operating expenses and the deal still works, usually you're going to be in pretty solid shape, right? So first and foremost is the education piece. And then the biggest piece is networking. Like you have to get in rooms with people that are doing what you want to do. And not only that, but you have to be willing to get the door slammed in your face, right? Like when we started looking at acquiring real estate, it was right after like the 2021, 2022 boom where multifamily prices were just shooting through the roof. Anything that was on market was really difficult to make work. So I was like, I have to get creative. We're not finding any deals that we can profitably underwrite that are on the market. How do we find deals that are off market? So basically, going back to being able to handle rejection, like it was cold calling potential sellers, messaging them on Facebook Marketplace of all places, believe it or not, is where we found both of our deals, our multifamily deals. So just kind of putting yourself out there, shaking hands and getting in front of as many people as possible to let them know what you're doing. Because if no one knows what you're doing, they can't bring you the deals. So it's education, and it's really just putting yourself out there and putting the reps in.
So it sounds like, again, first educate yourself. If you're watching this, you're trying to build real estate in your 20s, first educate yourself, right? Then network to get in the rooms to be able to apply that education you just learned. Do you need a lot of money?
It helps, yes. You don't need a lot to get started. Like for anybody that is getting started or wanting to get started with very little money, like there's a lot of good tools out there like FHA loans. You can buy up to 4 units. A lot of times the bank's going to let you get into that for less than 5% down. So like a lot of people that are wanting to get their foot in the door in some shape or form, like I always encourage them to start there. Like buy a duplex, buy a triplex, buy a 4 unit, live in one of the units, right? House hack. So that way the tenants are paying down your debt. You can live rent free, right? There's always a cost of living. So, whether you're renting from someone else or you're living in your own unit, but that's the easiest way to get started with as little money as possible. But when you start tackling larger deals, like it certainly helps to have money, right? When you have to go and start putting 20, 25% down on a, multi-$100,000 property or multi-million-dollar property, it just takes dollars to go and do that. There's ways where you can get into it where creative financing is huge, right? If you can get some seller financing, do a land contract where you can either cut out the bank or reduce the bank's, piece of the pie essentially. But it certainly helps to have money to get started. Yeah.
Because I know there's like obviously 2 very different ends of the spectrum. You have like the Dave Ramsey's where it's like, hey, I pay everything cash. Mm-hmm. Like don't go into the debt route. And then you have Grant Cardone who's leverage everything to the bone. Like where do you see yourself and where would you recommend, people be? Yeah.
I think it comes down to risk tolerance. Personally, I lean more towards the Grant Cardone route. Like I'm a risk taker and I'm okay with that. Some people aren't comfortable having a lot of debt. There's a big difference between debt. And I think that's where a lot of people, like when they listen to Dave Ramsey, they can kind of get a skewed notion like, oh, like all debt is bad debt. But when you talk about debt, not all debt is bad. There is very good debt and there is very bad debt, like credit card debt, obviously bad debt, right? But when we're talking about buying an asset with debt, think about what you're leveraging there. You're purchasing an asset. There's someone else paying down the debt on that asset as long as the property is performing well, right? So you're not really paying off that debt on your own, right? The tenants are paying it off for you. So the difference between the liability and the asset portion of that, credit card debt, liability, when you're buying a property or buying an asset, that obviously would be considered good debt.
Yeah, I think, we already kind of discussed this on one of our episodes, but like my general rule of thumb is like, don't finance your flex, right? Like if it's something that you're buying that's not actually creating any sort of cash on cash return, like it's probably not something you should be financing and leveraging to the up. If you're going to buy a $100,000 car, don't go put the minimum down payment on it. Probably not a great idea, right? Versus, I know on the property that I just bought, we were just having that discussion. Like this was the first ever property I bought. And I know I hit you up because I'm like, where should I find that threshold of how much money should I put down versus how much do I feel like I'm not putting enough down? And it's almost like, if you can put a smaller down payment down, but then still generate that cash flow, it's like, why wouldn't you?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's how I think always the biggest piece. It's like, at what point is that threshold of a down payment where it's still cash flowing or it's breaking even, right? Because obviously when you look at the cash on cash return on something, it doesn't always necessarily have to cash flow or break even immediately, but there's got to be a pathway to get it there. Right.
So on some deals, are you putting more money down to make sure it does cash flow right off the jump?
So thus far, we've put 20% down on both of our properties. And at those rates, like the one we bought a couple years ago, that at 20% down, it cash flowed day one as is. And then we obviously added another unit, which helped increase the cash flow. So that one was pretty much good from the get-go. The property we just acquired has basically been at break-even cash flow, right? And we haven't yet started to do any remodel projects with it. Really the game plan there is to go in, do remodels, obviously take those units from like a C plus, B minus sort of class up to A class. Oh. So we can get those rents up. And at that point, yes, should cash flow. But I would say in certain cases, we haven't come across it yet where it's made sense for us to adjust the down payment based on cash flow because they've been both at about break even when we purchased them. But in certain scenarios, yes, I would never want to buy something that was like grossly cash flow negative if I was only putting down 15, 20%, something like that.
Yeah. What was you mentioned like house hacking, and obviously that's what I'm doing now in my first real estate deal. And I think, again, it made a lot of sense for me because I'm not all in on the real estate game, but it was nice for the position I was in because I was already renting anyways. So I'm like, why not, maybe take it a little bit of advantage of it. I understand there might be a small headache that comes with it. Did you ever have to house hack or no?
I have not yet, because the first unit or the first property we bought was a 5-unit. So, and because I bought that with my business partner, we couldn't use an FHA loan on it. Yep. I still would like to do that though. I'm kind of looking for a 2 or a 4 unit to do that on in my hometown of Platteville. So if an opportunity came up, I would definitely do that. Yeah.
What, the big question is like, at what age is your real estate going to retire you? That's
a great question. I don't know that I can say.
What age could it?
What age?
Because I know you're always going to be pushing it. And then you get to that standpoint and then you're going to push it one more higher. Yeah. Like at what point could you legitimately see yourself just retiring? Not your goal, but like at what point could be like, I could live off this?
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's less about age and I think it's more about unit count. I would say 200 units. I think I would be able to feel comfortable replacing my income with the cash flow from that many units. So timeline, like, I don't know, 7, 8 years, right? That'd be kind of the ideal goal. I mean, we want to be to 100 units here in the next 5 years. We're a quarter of the way there. So I guess I would say that would get me to a spot where the cash flow from the units should be able to replace the income where I could live comfortably, right?
I'm not going to lie. I did not think you were going to say 200 units. That seems like a ton.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. And that's of course not accounting for, like when I talk about the cash flow from it, that would just be like monthly cash flow distributions, right? It wouldn't include appreciation. Yeah. It wouldn't include principal pay down, right? So there's other elements of it as well. And maybe one thing I'll kind of break down quick. So the interesting thing about the real estate aspect, the difference between someone working like a W-2 job or if I did go full-time into real estate, I would basically need half as much cash flow from the real estate to make the same income I'm making now because of the tax benefit portion of it and the depreciation. When you have rep status or real estate professional status, you get additional tax benefits that you can utilize from depreciation that a W-2 worker or a full-time employee doesn't get. So, if a W-2 worker is paying 40% in taxes, well, hey, someone that's investing full-time in real estate, they might have all this cash flow coming in, but the depreciation from those assets, in a lot of cases, is going to offset the income. Yep. Thus, the tax portion, that tax liability is pretty well offset in most cases.
So figure you got 200 units and you're 50-50 on all, like most doors or all doors that you have currently, correct?
So we're 50-50 on the first property. Okay. The second property, I own like 58% of it, I think. Okay. My partner owns like 35 individually, and then we have 2 passive investors as well. Okay. So I guess maybe, do you want me to break down like the holding company and kind of the structure of that? Okay. So my partner and I own 90 investments. That's our entity. That's basically our holding company that owns the assets. So 90 Investments is Cordell and I own our first property 50-50 via 90 Investments. 90 Investments is a 50-50 partnership. So this most recent deal that we did, 90 Investments owns like 35% of that.
Yep.
And then I personally own like another 25% on top of what 90 Investments owns. So my total ownership structure in that, I'm majority owner on that property. And then we do have two passive investors as well that we brought in just for outside capital. They basically put their money into the deal. They get a passive return on it and get obviously equity in the property over time.
So again, it sounds like every single deal is going to be manipulated a little bit differently from what you're telling us. At the standpoint of 200 doors, how much income do you feel like that'll be able to generate you?
I would say on properties that have been remodeled, because kind of our goal with finding a property is we want to find something that needs some TLC, right? It's been neglected. It needs to be rent increases after the properties have been turned over and remodeled. What we ideally shoot for after a property has been remodeled and is stabilized would be like $150 to $200 of cash flow per unit per month. So at 200 units, I'm just assuming kind of 50-50 here, I would say it should bring in roughly $15,000 to $20,000 a month from a cash flow standpoint at over 200 units.
That's a lot of cash flow.
Yeah, that would be solid.
We understand at this point in time, Brandon is a very expensive person and needs a ton of money to retire.
That's correct, yes.
Coming from the guy that just told us he never spends any money and saves everything.
Right.
What's the, we're going to wrap up this one. What's the one piece of advice? Again, I know you told us a couple practical steps. You told us things to watch out for. Kind of told us a little bit about your entity structure and the way you structure the deals. Kind of told us your goals and what the plan is there in terms of when you can actually see it, fulfilling what you're trying to achieve out of it. Like what's the one last nugget of advice you're going to give people watching, because again, they are coming for the real estate aspect. I know real estate is, everybody wants to be a real estate, mogul. It seems like it's just such a, quick, easy cash grab. It seems like, but like, what's the truth, transparency, dirty, not dirty, good, bad? Like, what is it? Last piece of advice you got to somebody watching?
Yeah. I know it sounds cliche, but people always say that time in the market is better than timing the market. And that's truly just like, if you can buy an asset with no need to sell it in the short term, then over the long term, that will pay you dividends, even if the property doesn't appreciate in value at all, right? Like you are constantly building equity through principal pay down. So if you can conservatively underwrite a deal and find something that works in an interest rate environment like we're currently in, 6, 7, 8%, then you should be able to make that deal work over the long term, assuming that we get some more favorable interest rates here in the future. So I guess probably my biggest nugget would be like, don't be afraid to take the risk. Like I said before, so many people just get stuck thinking that they can just learn and then eventually something's going to fall into their lap. They don't say be given an opportunity, right? They say take the opportunity, and you truly have to just take the opportunity.
That was an absolute fire way to end the episode. Everything you just said in the past 45 seconds was awesome. So we're going to end on that. Perfect. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Guys, you literally just watched exactly how to build a lifestyle that you can retire from that's going to pay you forever. Take his advice, do it right now, get educated, start doing it. We'll see you on the next episode.